Hey everyone, this is John Puritz. Welcome to the Man Up Already podcast. This show is dedicated to each of us being better in all areas of our lives, mentally, spiritually, physically, and relationally. We want to help you be a better you because when you man up already, the world around you is greatly impacted. Here on the podcast, we don't believe you're an accident. We believe each of us is created for purpose, and this show is dedicated to helping you discover and live out that purpose. Again, welcome to the show, and let's check out another great episode. All right. Hey, welcome everyone to the Man Up Already podcast. As always, super excited to have you here, and we're going to have another great guest and a great episode today. But before we bring them in, I want to remind you, help us grow the podcast, expand the message, please, right? That's not begging. That's just me asking. Like, subscribe, follow, whatever platform you're listening on, subscribe to the podcast. If you're on YouTube, like the episode, subscribe to the channel. We really do appreciate it. So, we've been in this adversity series for a while. And it's really kind of that, this is kind of the theme of the podcast, the discover your created purpose is our tagline. Discover your created purpose. And part of that discovering process is adversity and going through it, navigating it. And our guest today is going to be a great addition to that topic. Our guest today, Damion Lupo, is a seasoned entrepreneur who has launched and grown over 70 companies from 0 to 100 million throughout a remarkable 25-year journey. In addition to being a prolific author with 12 published books, he is celebrated for his extraordinary achievements in building multiple companies from the ground up, many which have reached 7, 8, and 9-figure valuations. Despite a significant setback that saw him lose a $20 million portfolio at the age of 30, Damion's resilience and determination led him to not only overcome homelessness, but also rebuild his wealth beyond 9 figures. So I'm sure Damion's going to have an incredible story of what he went through, speaking about adversity and thriving after it. So please welcome our guest, Damion Lupo. All right, Damion, good to have you on the Man Up Already podcast. Thanks for being here.
John, so good to be here. I'm glad to connect.
Yeah. Now I'm in Florida, right? And it's a little chilly, but you're wearing a sweatshirt. Where are you out of?
So it's funny because I was looking at the weather app this morning and it says 17 degrees cooler than normal. It's 48, feels like 38. I'm here in central Arizona. So
wow.
Our weather doesn't know what it's doing. I actually think that's kind of a lot of places. It's symbolic of society. We don't really know what's happening. It's kind of chaos. And you have to navigate through whatever it is.
That's so true. Very true. That is a good metaphor. So again, it's good to have you on here. You've in your bio and in the intro, I was talking about how you've been on this journey, it seems like, of entrepreneurship. And I love entrepreneurship, right? I've been in it for over 20 years, and we could start with this. There's that picture of what people think success and entrepreneurship are like, with the line, right? But it's really this squiggly mess that the journey takes you on. So it sounds like you've kind of been through that.
Yeah, there's an experiment about these spiders, and they gave them caffeine, cocaine, and marijuana one time, and then looked at how they made webs, like which ones were organized. And the craziest one was caffeine. And I feel like that when I have too much caffeine, but it's like the life of an entrepreneur. It's just all over the place. You're jumping, you're surging, and then you go left, right, up, down. And it is absolutely never a straight line with anything. And right. If you're just embracing that is what's really important. If you fight it, life is utter hell. And I think that's important for anybody to realize really early.
Well, yeah, I mean that, and I was going to say that, right? We talk about it with entrepreneurship, but I think, and I'd love your take on this, is, I don't know, it just feels like that we're in a moment of history and you kind of mentioned it right out of the gate, where a lot of the things that we considered normal or staples in life, like everything is kind of in flux right now post COVID, where maybe that straight line is kind of gone, Love your take on that.
Yeah, I think we are in a point where it's what was in the past, what was true, what we thought we could rely on. I remember thinking back in the 90s, I got an opportunity to have a life insurance or an insurance agency when I was like 19 years old. And there was a certain predictability around doing that from what I was told. Like you do these things and you build a book of business. Like I was like, that's great. And I remember my insurance agent as a kid, he always had nice cars and vacations. And that model continues to evolve, and it's not what it was in 1980. And like we have to be very, very future focused because of all the stuff that's going on. It's unpredictable right now, and it's hard for people because people want certainty. It's one of those basic human needs, one of those six
Right.
human needs, the certainty. And there is less and less certainty. There's a hell of a lot more variety, but it's like to predict our future, we have to be actively engaged in it. I think a lot of people are not really knowing what to do as any type of step, and so they're in a panic mode, which creates a lot of anxiety in society. I think that's a lot of what we're feeling with people. They just don't know what next year or 10 years is going to look like, and it makes them very anxious, and then they get kind of hostile towards anything that's out there, that because of the confusion around predicting their future. So I think that's the more that we can embrace responsibility and say, okay, it's my life, it's my damn fault, I'm going to go create it, the less anxiety we have. And that's a big shift, because we're not taught about accountability. We're taught about blame by so many
Right.
different, people and messages. So there is a big, I think there's a big shift that has to happen.
Well, and I talk a lot about it here on the podcast, right? And I love talking to entrepreneurs because we understand this. And I think one of the coolest books to kind of dive into what we're talking about was actually the Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki, because that whole book is on going from the mindset of an employee into self-employed. Like it was all about mindset versus where Rich Dad Poor Dad kind of talked about each quadrant, and I think a key ingredient to not just entrepreneurship but success and discovering that created purpose that I talk about a lot is you've got to take extreme ownership. You've got to take responsibility, right? It's no outside source at the end. It really starts on the inside, and what do we need to clean up and what do we need to do to move our lives forward. And the big thing that I'm talking about lately is, and you just mentioned it, we can't focus on the future, and the past is, you can't do anything about it. It really is about being present. What can I do today, take responsibility for, so I can move forward?
Yeah, I have a perspective on, people they ask me all the time. They're just trying to get advice with money or life or whatever, and I'm like, look, there's two things you got to do. You got to really figure out where the heck you are, like what's true. And that was after in 2008, when I blew up my life and lost 25 million. I was homeless, and it was very cold, by the way. If you anybody that's ever been homeless, and if you're in northern Arizona in January, it's freaking cold to be homeless. So I'm doing this whole process, and on the other side of that, when I was rebuilding life and figuring myself out, I ended up spending 2 years in this with a coach therapist, asking one question. And the question is, what is true? And then I wrote a book called Reinvented Life about this. And it was interesting to dig down, because what I realized going through that process, I was very easily and happily telling myself a lot of lies about who I was and what I was doing and why I was doing it. And whenever I'm talking with somebody or hearing their story, the first question I have is, are you really wanting to know what's true? Because you can't get anywhere if you don't know where you are. You're just going to be going in what, like, the direction doesn't really matter until you have your base. Like, what's your anchor? And that's really hard for people, because a lot of times, especially with money and life, people have to acknowledge, man, I've made some really dumb decisions, and I'm going to have to change some things. And then you can start actually predicting things, because you can control your inputs. The output is sort of a reflection of the inputs. And I find that most people are living in a false sense of reality, and they don't really want to know reality, because it means they're going to have to acknowledge what they've done in the past. And that's hard, man. It's hard work to do.
Yeah, it's so true. So you dropped a little bomb right there. So let's talk about that. Most people listening probably don't experience homelessness, and so let's get your story. What happened?
So in my 20s, so it's funny. I was selling insurance back in the late 90s for a couple of years, and then I actually read Donald Trump's books back then. I was like, oh, real estate, that sounds awesome. He's a big real estate guy, and I thought I want to do some real estate. So I did some real estate and bought some houses and built a portfolio. And I thought, this is pretty cool. And my timing was really good. I mean, I wasn't the smartest guy. I just listened to people that had come before me, and I just modeled what they did. And then I made a bunch of money, like many millions, and bought a Ferrari. And I thought I was, pretty smart and 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And in 2007, I started leveraging up pretty bad. It seemed good, but the leverage is pretty bad if it goes the wrong direction. And
Sure.
ultimately everything collapsed in the same year. And I lost, it was about 25 million. Everything went away. In fact, I tell this story in my mind, like all the money went away. My girlfriend went away. The dog went away. My house went away. I should have moved to Nashville, John, because my life was a country song. Like literally, it would have been great
Wow.
material. And then so all that stuff went away, and I had to start over. And the biggest interesting part about that, one, it was a huge gift. It was terrible and hard in the middle of it, but it really forced me to go do some deep introspective work. And it took about 4 years to get through that. And that was one of those things that I was told would probably happen. Like people in my early career said, or they asked me, "Have you gone bankrupt yet?" And I was like, "That's the stupidest thing you could say." And they're like, "Well, there's a process. There's a process of losing things, of going through the cycle." And what they were telling me was, "I don't really trust you or who you are until you've gone through these things, because if it's all blue skies and there's no storms and you don't have that scar tissue, I'm not really sure what you're going to be like when there's a storm. And so I want to know that you've
Wow.
gone through it." And I was like, "I get it now." But that was a hard thing to hear from somebody. And then I look back and think that was the best gift I could have gone through, because it gave me this incredible perspective and gratitude for the things that came after that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, gosh, that's so great, right? Like we so avoid the pain, we avoid the unknown, right? And when we're going through it, it's very dark. But you look back on it and you go, that's the thing that, that chiseled me out, right? Without that refining process, I wouldn't be the human being that I am, and the wisdom that I'm sure you have now, from that experience. But I would imagine the pit of 25 million of just experiencing that, and that's got to be a crazy mental journey for sure.
There's a few things there that I think are really important. And because one of the things that comes up, somebody hears 25 million, they're like, "Well, I don't know what that's like." It doesn't matter if it's 25,000, 25 million. If it's everything you've got plus some, it's still everything you got. And
Right.
like, when you have to start over, that was it was hard. But one of the coolest things, I had a mentor at the time, and I told him what had happened. And one of the things that I'd gone through, I had a partnership, and it turned out that the guys were kind of slime balls, and they stole many millions of dollars. And I told him about it. He knew all of us, and he said, "Don't, it doesn't matter." And I said, "How do you mean it doesn't matter?" He said, "It won't matter. At some point," it was like $5 million. He goes, "At some point, this won't matter. That 5 million." And I'm looking at him like he's literally on drugs. I was like, "How can you say that? $5 million?" And he was right. It took 15 years from that point, but it ultimately, that didn't matter. And it was just, he said, this is part of a process. He was a lot wiser than I was. I was young and dumb and crushed and mad and going through the cycles of grief. And at that point, I was blaming
Hmm.
people.
Yep.
And that was an incredibly useful perspective that you don't get until you have the tax of going through it, the scar tissue, the blood and the mud. I'm just incredibly grateful that I remember that. And there was a little part of me that trusted that. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to go try to find him and hurt him. This guy, I'm going to let go of this, say blessings to you. And that's really hard. I'm going to go build something. I'm going to go shift from this idea that if I work really hard and get smarter, I can make a lot of money, to I'm going to figure out how I can make the biggest impact on humanity and serve people, and let money be a side effect. That was the biggest shift in 2012 and 13, was pivoting from getting to giving. And it may seem, and people have heard it, kind of altruistic, but the reality is, from everything I've seen in my experience the last decade, when you serve your highest potential, building something, delivering something, it's other people, and you shift away from hedonism, which I was really good at. It's amazing. All the financial stuff, it takes care of itself in a way that you can't even imagine if that's your focus.
Love that. I just, it's almost like I don't want to say anything, because what you just said, it just lives there. It's so important. I mean, so important on, I love the shift, right? Go right. What can I get to what can I give? But more importantly, I look at the events of '08. I have a business, and that got crushed and had to start over. And as crappy as that journey is, I love what you just said. It doesn't, all those things don't matter, right? The money part doesn't matter. the homes and all, and I'm going through a little bit of adversity right now, as we speak, but there are the things that matter in life. You know what I mean? I think I don't know how old you are. I'm 54, but I think it's just understanding the things that actually matter are what you're talking about, right? The impact that you made on people, how you show up in the world every day. Life does have a way of expanding and moving forward, regardless of all those things that you're talking about. It's who's the human being that you're becoming through that journey.
It's one of in this journey in 2013. I got a call from my dad, and it was Thanksgiving weekend. I was in New Jersey, and he called me, and he left a voicemail, and he said, "Hey, it's your dad. Just wanted to let you know the test came back, and it's stage 4. And hope you had a nice Thanksgiving. Talk to you soon. Love you." And it was like a stun grenade. I was like, I got tasered, and I was like, whoa, that's not good. So I got on a plane, went to Alaska, and sat down with him. And this was like about 6 weeks before he died. And it was our last conversation. And he said, there were so many things that I wanted to do. And he realized he was out of time. And it burned, it like seared into my soul what regret looks like. And I thought about that. And that was a part of the driving force for the last 10 years, thinking about this stuff. If this is my last year, what's this year going to be like? I don't think about it, is this my last day? Because it puts too much pressure on trying to do everything. But if I have one more year of seasons, I have one more spring, what is that going to be like? It's not going to just be pina coladas on the beach. It's going to be everything I can to serve and to connect. And that was to what you said a second ago. The thing, when I look back, there was a cost. All that time that I was spending trying to get money, one thing I wasn't doing was deeply connecting with people. And so there was no wife, there was no kids, there really wasn't a deep connection with community. And on the other side of this, at 47, that's something that, if there's any regret, it's like, wow, putting the time and energy into humans the way that I see it now, and the way I pour myself into it, that was a missing piece. And I don't want that for anybody, where you miss that piece, because there's a pain about that missing in your life. And so unfortunately, we're into such a materialistic society. People spend way too much time figuring out how they're going to get shiny objects instead of connecting with people. And I don't think there's anything more powerful than two people and relationships. And really, when you have those, like you said, what matters, that matters. That matters, how you connect with other people. At the end of the day, you can't take the stuff with you, but the legacy and the ripple effect on other people and how you love them and connect with them, there's nothing more important in life from my perspective.
You said that your dad, from that call, hey, I got stage 4, to him passing, was 6 weeks?
Yeah, about 6 weeks.
How old were you when that happened?
So that was a decade ago. So I was in my like 36.
Yeah. So you and I have never met, right? We're meeting here on the podcast.
Yeah.
I was 38 when that call came in, and it was 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And I know exactly and intimately what you're talking about, and how that molds you and how that shapes you. It's just so key to really pay attention to how we show up and who we are. You could go on and on about that, but I'm really, again, super pumped just to hear that story and have you here, because your wisdom is so great. You talk about the power of seeking guidance from others and staying humble and true. Can you kind of touch on that and why that's important for you?
I think we can. We tend to delude ourselves. We have a perspective that's based on our own experiences and our emotions and what we want, and then we create this reality around it. And when in the beginning of my adulting, if you will, I had a lot of mentors, and I listened to them. I was like, there was books and tapes. I was listening to people. I was burning Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins and these real estate gurus into my head.
Mm-hmm.
And those were my friends, because the people that I had around me from high school and afterwards, they literally looked at me like an alien. And then my parents were trying to get me to go to college, and I was like, I'm going to become a bazillionaire. And so I was inundating myself. I was using osmosis, and I did that for a while. And then I hired humans, where I was in masterminds and mentors that were giving me advice. And I did that for probably 5-6 years. And then I thought, oh, I don't need those guys, because I am that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And my ego got so big. Look, when you know things, you've gone through things, it's okay to have an ego. Like if Michael Jordan said, I'm the best basketball player, that's not ego. To me, that's fact. And so there's a point where if Michael Jordan says, "Oh shucks, I'm an okay basketball player," you look at him, you're like, "You're an idiot. You're not an okay. Like you did it." And what I realized, it's incredibly dangerous when you are the smartest person in the room and you think you know everything or you don't need guidance from people. And then the question is, where do you get the guidance? Who do you choose? And is it your neighbor, your family, your friends? And I think that there's something that's really important about seeking people that are their only focus, their only mission is to tell you the truth. And your choice going into that conversation is, I'm going to listen to them. I'm not going to blow them off. And so I'm a huge proponent of people paying mentors that are focused on the truth, because we tend to pay attention to what we pay for. And that just doesn't, that's universal. So finding those people and then choosing them and then committing to them. One of the things that I've seen people and heard people say, well, I don't know if I want to invest in a coach or a mentor or somebody. And I go, you know why? And they say, why? Because they're not that good. And I say, no, because you're not that committed. When you're fully committed, it won't matter what the mentor or the coach or the therapist says. Their job is to open space, because like there's a Netflix with Tony Robbins. You are your own guru. There's stuff inside of you. And the job of somebody else oftentimes is to ask a question and then let you go, yeah, okay, this is the thing. But we don't even know what questions to ask. So the power of somebody else opening space and asking a question, like when Frank said, what is true? For 2 years, we asked and answered that same question, going deeper and deeper. That's the power of having other people. We won't get there the same way. It'll kind of happen sometimes, but the reality is you can speed things up. And if you want the ultimate hack, have somebody that can open space and ask questions.
Two things. And again, I always talk about success is, my saying is, success is built on a chassis, right? It is a fundamental thing that you can apply in all different areas. Again, we're meeting for the first time. You're talking about the things that this entire, podcast and the book that I wrote, Man Up Already, is based on. You need a posse. Number one, you've got to have people around you that inspire you to be better, that you can speak with, that know you, that help you grow. And investing in coaching, investing in those that can help you. A future episode of the podcast comes out of the biblical verse. You can't pour old wine into new wineskins, or you can't pour new wine into old wineskins, right? Meaning you can't pour new thoughts into an old mindset. It just doesn't work. And coaches help you expand and grow. Like, you can't fix the same. I heard one time, the mindset that created the problem is not the same one that helps you move beyond it, right? And that's where mentors and guides help you get to that next level. I'm a big fan of Donald Miller, and his book Hero on a Mission, right? There's the victim, the villain, the hero, and then there's the guide. And the guide is so key to helping that hero fulfill the missions. And it's what you're talking about. So I love it.
Yeah, that there's a similar saying that I heard. I think it was Einstein, that you can't solve a problem at the same energy, the same level of energy as the problem was created. And one of the things about mentors, especially, I'm a big fan of having people that are at least 10 to 20 years beyond you in terms of experience and wisdom. I feel like I have about 1,000 years of experience. So I think I qualify for most people because I've just gone through so much crap. But having people that have gone through things, there's a different energy when you've gone. The wisdom is really this emotional intelligence that's baked into your DNA after you go through something. When somebody comes to me and they say, here's my life, or here's my balance sheet, or here's what I'm doing, I can see things into the future, just like anybody that's gone through stuff like you can see it because you feel it. And our emotions are the way that our brains work. If it's baked into our psyche, it's fast. If it's in our frontal lobe and we have to consciously think about it, it's very slow. I don't need a week to think about somebody's, whether it's their job they're looking at, or a relationship or an investment. I can tell like in a split second, because it's just when you've gone through these things, when you can feel it, like all those losses, they burn the information that you need into your core, into your cells. And so when I go through life, I have a vantage point using that as a guide, if you will. And it's a powerful thing. So going back to the whole point of that, having people that are 10, 20 years down the road, they can accelerate, they can see things. When you say, well, I have this question, and it's like, boom, automatically, here's what I see about where this is going. They can see around the corner. And so I started a mastermind type of thing called 1522 based on the Proverbs. And it was about the wisdom of other people. It's critical. If you don't have that, you're simply not equipped to see around the corner, because we don't have enough life to experience everything to get us to the point where we can see it. So that's tax. People go, what should I do? I'm like, find the right posse, find the right tribe, and then engage it and give everything, pour into it, and watch what happens.
And we briefly mentioned you being humble, and humility to me is a pillar of success. And often I get back from people like, gosh, John, you're so, you ask questions, you're transparent, you show your emotion. And I think that those are things like, I think people, especially today in the digital world, I love your take on this, is they're starving for authenticity, because everything is so online driven and you don't know what's real. And that when somebody shows up who's been through what we're talking about, and humble and transparent, and being able to share, I think people respect the gift of, here's my story, and transparently, here's what I screwed up, and here's what, you know what I mean? Like, so many times people are looking to gloss it over for fear of wow, you did that. But I think the offering of, hey, you're a real human being, and you know what I mean? Or here's the gift of my story, because we're all screwed up and go through adversity and all that. I just think it's such a key, especially today, when you don't know what's real.
That there was an event that I went to, or I was going to go to. I went to one year. I spoke. I was a keynote speaker, and the next year, I thought I was going, and the host, the guy that was running the thing, turns out he's like, yeah, I don't really want to have Damion on stage because he lost all this money, and we don't want to have that. And I thought, that's really interesting, because that was the same story I had last year, but his group was getting bigger, and he was concerned that people would say, oh, it might not end well. And I thought, that's very disingenuous. That's very, like, I look at people and I want to know what they've screwed up. I want to know what they failed. I want to know when, like, they're, whatever they've done, the businesses they've done that have failed. I'm more interested in that than the successes. I think that you're exactly right. When people are out there looking, everything is shiny, and I see influencers, I see social media where people talk about their successes, and then they're teaching about money and investing, and I look at it and I go, how do you know anything about this? You're literally 24. How do you haven't been through anything yet? And they made a bunch of money on YouTube, and therefore they're a genius investing in real estate. And I go, yeah, but you don't know actually how to go build a business other than online, so you can replicate that. I think that most people are looking for the thing that the highlight reel on social media, and then they say, this is perfect, that's what I want. And they don't realize that it was 10 or 20 years of getting beat up. They don't realize the struggle. They don't realize all the other stuff. So it's incredibly important to look for the warts, not just the shiny, glossed over, makeup, version of something. But that's what you mostly see. And I just don't trust it. I trust reality, and I want to know the whole picture. And I think that that's the most important thing. Ask people, like, hey, what's real about your life? Give me the trauma and the drama. Like, I want to see that stuff. Because if you don't have that, then you're lying to me, or you're 22 without a story of life yet.
Right. And to circle back, taking personal responsibility, I love asking the question, tell me about your worst screw up, what you learned through that process, or what you did, right, to clean it up, or how'd you get through that process, and what did you learn about yourself? You know what I mean? Because the question is not about, you can't blame anybody out. Like, what did you screw up? What did you take responsibility for? How'd you work your way out of it? And what did you learn? And if the answer is, you know what I mean? If there's not a ready answer, or there's a cover up, you know who you're dealing with, right? Because those that do and go through the process, there's a self-respect that comes out of that, to be able to confidently share, because you know the cost you paid to get to be the human being that you are today. You would not be who you are today without the price you paid to get here.
That is the admission ticket to a whole slew of things, including, like, if you want to have people trust you and your humanity and your humility, you have to be willing to talk about all that stuff and own it. And then one of my mentors 20 years ago said, you have no idea how free you'll be until you stop caring what other people think. And we're in the world of the opposite of that, where everybody's trying to get more likes and clicks and things, and they want everybody to like their stuff and cheer them on. And I at the time I was in my 20s, and I was like, yeah, that's perfect. But I was still too worried about the judgment, and trying to do things like making decisions when I was doing some real estate stuff, making decisions that I was hoping would make other people happy, and end up I got killed because I wasn't willing to, like, I remember one of my real estate things, I had this in 2007. I didn't want to acknowledge reality. I wanted to sort of pretend everything was going to be fine. And I was bleeding to death financially. So I kept taking out credit card debt, ended up with $1 million on Visa that I was just taking and throwing at debt payments. In reality, if I was to say the truth is this didn't work and then pull the plug, that would have been honest. What I was doing was trying to make other people happy. And all I did was prolong the thing and put me in a worse and worse situation. People were still going to be upset. But what they also had to contend with, not just the loss, was dealing with somebody that wasn't in reality. So I think you actually break trust when it doesn't mean you just give up and say, okay, well, it didn't work. But to be honest and say, hey, this is not working. I'm going to keep working on it. And there's a period of time where you grind through things. That's just a powerful thing in general, to always be honest with people, whether it's employees or your team or investors or whatever. Like, and you've talked about this, just being in relationship with people and the trust that's built because you're direct with them. That's missing because people are concerned about the judgment. They don't want people to not like them. We all want people to like us, but when you stop obsessing about that, there's this power, and a deeper relationship can be built because people realize you're not full of crap.
Well, and that was going to be our next topic. So let's just jump in there. I love what you said. You'll never know how free you will be when you stop caring about what others think. Huge, huge. And I hope people really heard that, because judgment is, listen, I'm a big faith-based guy, right? I think judgment is a lie from the enemy. It's a tool used to get us to, I don't know if you've ever read the book Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. It's one of my favorite books. But that fear of judgment gets us to start drifting away from, right, that purpose, that we talk about. So I love, the concept of honesty. I have in my notes, honesty outperforms transactional relationships and creates unbreakable bonds. So let's dive in more to that, because I know you have a story on the other side of what you're up to now that contributes to that.
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed the last 5 years, there's been a lot of chaos, and like we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, just in terms of the society and the investing world, people trying to figure things out. And what we're trying to figure out is what's actually true, what's honest, what's real, and what I've found is that people have gone, their trust has deepened with me even when things went bad because of the level of transparency. I think about 15 years ago, and I was so afraid of being wrong, and then having to tell people, look, I screwed up, or I was wrong, or this didn't go well. We lost this thing, and the difference now is that what I've realized is most people, when you're straight with them, direct with them, they'll just keep going with you because they realize nothing is a straight line, like our spider conversation earlier. Like it's all over the place, but they want to be on the train with you. No matter, they're like, they want to hitch their wagon to you, if you will. I remember, and we all have this story to some extent when we're kids. We're told that if you're wrong, they basically judge you, meaning if you get 50-60% right, which means you're half wrong, then you're judged and you're ostracized and you're a failure. And they say, I got straight A's as a kid. So everybody's like, oh, parents are happy. And I thought that was what it was. And I missed the lesson there. I missed the opportunity to screw up and then go through that because I was really good at memorizing things. And our society has set people up to fail because it's telling them that you need to be perfect, you need to win. And I laugh and I go, the reality is, in the real world, in business, if you're 40% right or 50% right, you're a billionaire. If you're 30% right in sports, you're a Hall of Famer.
Right.
And we're taught the opposite. And we're so obsessed with the judgment of wanting people to like us, to be right. And it's funny because if you think about what you learned in school as a kid, oftentimes it's the exact opposite that in reality is true. And that's what I've found. And I really appreciate all these lessons and having lost things, because I realize what it takes to build deeper relationships with people is transparency and grind. Like those two things, it's unbelievable where you can go when you're willing to do the work, not for a minute or a week or a month, but for years, and then keep staying open with people. it's like anything is possible because people will go anywhere you want to go.
And it's just to add to that, that's where I think social media can be a plus, is instead of using it to show highlight reels, right? Or manufactured moments, start showing real life. Like, hey, like I go on, I do something called the ride along, right? And I talk about, here's what I learned. Like, here's the lesson. Here's, I joke. It was funny because people related to it. I was talking about how, do you know what Malamars are?
I've heard that, but I don't know what
Yeah,
it is.
it's a cookie, right? It's like this
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
chocolate covered marshmallow cookie. It's really awesome, but it's seasonal. And I was in the grocery store. I see them, and I talk myself out of getting them. Right? I don't get them, and then they're not there for like 3 weeks. Right? And I did this whole thing on, not recognizing moments, and sometimes it's just eat the damn cookie, because life is really about sometimes enjoying a moment, because you never get that moment back, right? You know what I mean? But like, I share these things, and people were like shooting pictures of Malamars. They were looking for them. You know what I mean? And I brought people into just the real, honest journey. Sometimes it's a small thing like a cookie. Sometimes it could be, surviving a hurricane, or you know what I mean? Like, people, you can use the mediums available to us to actually show that you're a real human being, and bring them into your story, and you be in theirs.
And that's part of human connection. That's building those relationships. That's building a tribe. When I wrote Reinvented Life in 2012, part of it was understanding my own thinking and who was I, and like, it was cathartic, getting all the stuff out. But it was also, I wanted to be able to share these things and help people see stuff. And I thought maybe somebody will get some use out of this, and they can hack my decade of chaos. And I remember a few people came up to me and they said, I didn't realize I thought I was the only one going through this,
Mm.
and you did this. And to your point about these cookies, people, they love the fact that wow, there's somebody kind of like me, or they have this connection. And we're just more and more isolated. Like, all this animosity politically is because we're more and more isolated. The reality is, a person in front of you is, I mean, to be fair, we're like 97% of the same DNA as a banana, but humans also are pretty close to the same. We are humans, and it's really cool when we can find ways to connect instead of finding ways to divide. So whether
Mm.
it's a cookie or a book or just a smile, like, there's this beautiful thing when you shift your focus towards, I'm going to find the differences, to I'm going to open myself up, and then all of a sudden, magic, people find, oh, I'm like you, and we build bonds, and it calms everything down, and we bring people together, and it builds bridges. It's just a very cool thing what you're talking about, and apparently it all started with cookies.
It's interesting, right? I think that's why food is such a connector, right? Because it breaks down those barriers, and your humanity starts to come out, because of everybody can relate to it. So it's really awesome. And now you have used all of this. You're up to something big right now, I think, in the construction world. Yes.
Yeah, what's really funny. I've been working on this project called Frame Tech. You and I are talking here in like, what month is this? In October of 2024, and we just started delivering our first framed houses, and this has been a 2.5 year project to where it's now live. And what's fascinating is people go, okay, and I'll share what this all is, but they go, 2.5 years, you literally went from a napkin to a functioning 220,000 square foot factory with automation and all this stuff. You did that in 2.5 years. And I go, no, it was like 50 years. That's how long it's been for the inventor to be working in the space and building, and all this stuff looked like it happened overnight. What happened is, all of the proverb, or the Chinese proverb, that luck is when opportunity meets preparation.
Right.
And that's what happened 3 years ago. I had a friend of mine bring me this pile of paper. He literally flew out to Dallas and handed me paper. Apparently he didn't want to email because he wanted to go old school. And I said, okay, cool. So I looked at this deal and I was like, this can't be real. This is a disruption to the entire construction industry. These guys have this idea. They want to solve the housing crisis because we're not building enough houses. Houses prices are going, they're too high. People can't afford them. And there's just not enough people building. And we ignored it for 6 months. And then finally I looked at it and I said, I want to meet these guys. So I met the guys that became the operators. And I said, you know what? I really like this deal, but I really, really like you guys. And I want to be a part of this. And my community, I think, is going to want to be a part of this and be the fuel for you guys and for this. And so we went all in and said, let's do this. So we started building this thing. And basically what we're doing is we're vertically integrated in the framing space. So all the floors, the walls, the trusses, all the bones, the wood bones for houses and apartments, we're building them in a factory, and then we bring them out and we put the thing together. And we do this whole process is so cool because we do it 4 times faster than traditional. So we're not a little bit better, we're 4 times. That's exponentially better. We're 10 times better quality because it's controlled in a factory. And then we have 90% less waste. So normally, if you go look at houses or apartments, you see these dumpsters full of forests. So it's destroying these resources and creating a huge carbon footprint, and like it's just a mess. We've eliminated effectively all of that. We have sawdust, but because of this technology that was invented by a guy that's been around for 50 years, where we stick these boards together using a finger joiner, what happens is we don't really have waste. I mean, virtually none. It's a rounding error. So everybody wins. And there's been a term called stakeholder, like making sure all the stakeholders win. This is like an investment term and society term with companies. And what's really cool is it's not lip service. Like literally everybody is winning. The employees, the environment, the community, like everybody that's a part of this thing gets to win. And the only loser truly is legacy thinking and legacy systems that need to be broken up. And in construction, the last innovation was like 1954. It was the nail gun. So to be able to bring something to the table and come online and share that with the world, people are watching going, whoa, that we're going to have to change because we see the future. I mean, frame tech is really the future of framing, and it's how we solve this problem. The millions of missing houses that are out there, like that's a big problem. And I say, look, find a big problem and go solve it. This was our big problem that landed on our lap. And the question was, were we ready? And it was the 25 years in my case of getting my butt kicked, starting 70 plus companies, and most of those not working, but learning, like they were learning opportunities, not winning opportunities. And that's what led to this thing. And now it's the overnight success story that turned into this unicorn, literally, is from people coming together with decades of doing things and messing up and learning and getting wiser and balder. And we end up in a space where we're now helping to solve something that really hits all of society. So that's frame tech is like, it's something that I think the idea of is people think I want to build something big and cool. And sometimes you have to build something small and rusty for a while. And then you go through this process. I've just been very, very blessed and fortunate to have an incredible group of people I get to work with and build something that's going to help society.
And I love that story because everything that you talked about on the show today, right, leads up to this moment that you're now prepared for, right? And so when we're in, when you're in the pit, when you're in the valley, right, you just don't know why, right? Why am I going through this? Why is this happening? And we're not supposed to know, because then we'll try to manufacture it, figure it out, etc. It just, if we're receptive, if we're open, it happens. And I love that. I can relate to a little of what you're talking about. When I first moved to Florida 21 years ago now, I worked with a company that prefabbed the concrete walls. Well, everybody here's building in brick. They were manufacturing the walls, and my job was to help, make sure the slab was ready for those walls to be set, bolted, and then the frame of the roof, the trusses bound it all together. And I thought at that time how innovative that was, and such a cool thing to see it now happening. And so that's really very cool.
Well, and something I think is really, really important to take away for everybody to think about, because one of the things that comes up, people ask when they're thinking about being involved with what we're doing or being a part of this, they go, well, what about competition? And like concrete walls and 3D printed houses and tiny houses and all the innovation out there. And I smile and I go, there is no competition. There's cooperation. We're all trying to solve together a giant, huge problem. So I'm not saying, oh, that's a bad idea. 3D printing in Austin that we see is that they're going to hurt us. I go, that's fantastic. Other people are also trying to solve this. So I'm cheering everybody on to win. And if, to the extent that you can find that mental and emotional and spiritual space when you're looking at your work or whatever you're building in life, I think it's a lot healthier to go about it versus saying it's win-lose. It's very scarce. It's Malthusian economics. Like there's only a limited amount. And if I win, you lose. If you win, I lose. Instead, you say, okay, society wins and we're all rowing. And then all of a sudden there's this conspiracy to evolve and grow and serve. I just think that that's a completely different way of approaching things versus you're going to have to hurt if I win. That's just dumb to me. I think there's a different approach where we build things together. And this isn't socialism. It's literally cooperation. And cooperation
100%.
is a lot better to me than saying, okay, win, lose is the only way. I think that that's a broken way of approaching business and life.
100%. We talk a lot about when you choose to move forward in life and you do it positively with a good attitude, good ethics, all the things that we're talking about, the universe really does conspire. You use the same word for you to grow, for things to grow, to move forward. Like that is the ingredient, right? It is just move forward, have eager expectation, even when you're in the valley, right? That's why, right? God says, don't worry about tomorrow. Worry about today. I got you today. Be present. And the universe expands and you get to be a part of that. And you never know when the person 50 years ago was working on something to meet you in that moment today. And somebody's working in another industry and learn something and that connection happens and then things move forward. We so try to manufacture the future instead of just staying present and working on what we can today and letting things happen and unfold the way they need to.
It's unbelievably true. We've heard this word the last, I don't know, 4, 5, 10 years, that the word conspiracy, like there's all these conspiracies, and it 100% true. I mean, a lot of the conspiracies we read about have actually become true, but the conspiracy of the universe, of God saying, okay, I got a plan and you don't know what it is. You won't know maybe until the end or maybe never, but there is a plan. And if you, the only way that works is if you trust and let go into, like, as you move forward to what you're saying about moving forward. It's not there. There's this really good, and you guys just went through a hurricane out in Florida, but that whole thing about, hey, there's water coming up and it's rising above the house, and I'm waiting, and people are trying to help you, and you're like, I'm waiting, and
Right.
all these things are happening with boats and helicopters, and eventually you die, and God, that whole thing, God says, what were you doing? He's like, well, I was waiting for you to save me. He's like, I sent 14 people to try to help you. And there is this conspiracy, and you have to have your eyes open and not be living in the past and not be anxious about the future. But to your point about being present, being in the moment, that's where it happens. That's where that's where the bliss is. That's where the power is. Power is in the present, and being clear about the thing that you're doing, and the thing that you're being today in this moment that's where all the juice is. People tend to not trust enough that there is a plan. And so like you're saying, there's force. Great book, Power versus Force. People are forcing things. And when you have this presence, there's this incredible power in that moment. And it's also a lot calmer. There's so much anxiety that we have about the future and this depression about the past. And it's like, well, yeah, it's because you're not here. Like, where the heck are you? And people's minds are somewhere else. And when that shifts, when you go into the present, you also realize that you don't have problems. Like I ask people sometimes, what's your problem about? Like, what are you worried about? And they go, this and this and this. And I go, what's your problem right now in this moment? And the answer is almost always nothing. Like, you're not sick. You're not homeless. In this moment, your anxiety about problems that probably won't even exist, they're not even real. And the reality is we don't really have problems in the moment. And that's the only time we can have a problem. We just have projections. And that's a huge shift into just a quality of life and a happiness that most people are missing.
That's so good, man. That is, I've been talking about that for weeks. So it's so awesome to have you on here, just, through your own journey, right? That we can get across to listeners that everybody's on the same journey, right? I mean, it's different circumstances, but we're all trying to get to, I think, the same place. So, man, it has been an honor and a pleasure having you today. I'm so great to meet you. How do people follow you? Where can they find you?
Best place to find me is literally connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and just wherever you are. I mean, some people are on both, but I'm there, and chattering and being real and raw and sharing the work I'm doing and the way that I think in these spaces. Like, the focus that I have, it's funny. I've got a podcast I did for a couple of years, and it's about to be relaunched, called FU, Financial Underdogs. And it's where I just talk about my perspective on what's going on and how you interact with it. And there's we to your point from a while ago, you're talking about just the openness and the realness versus the shiny, pretend. I think that's part of my job is to go and grind and be honest and open. And even when it's not agreeable, it's real. I'm not trying to spin anything for any particular reason. But I think it's important for people to be open, and I'm grateful to guys like Elon so that we still have a space for doing that. I think that's
Right.
important for us to have the communication and be able to share ideas. And so I'd love to have people reach out. And actually, if you want to direct message me, there's a book I wrote called Unicornomics. Anybody that sends me a message, I'm happy to physically send you a copy of Unicornomics. That's the first 15% that's critical for business to have an 85% likelihood of success. That was me with like about 50 companies of experience and saying, here's the core. And I'm happy to send a copy of that to anybody that wants to directly message me and give you a leg up, and you can shave off maybe 10 years of brain damage that I went through.
Wow, I appreciate that, you offering that. That's awesome. I'll make sure that we connect on those platforms as well. And thank you truly for being here. I wish you a great weekend. But I really, it's been an honor. I needed a lot of things that you said today. I just needed to hear myself, which is the best part of podcasting is I learn and receive just as much. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the space. Thanks for the time. Thanks for the commitment to helping people be better and just have a better life. This is what we need more of the world, more people doing what you're doing in the world. So please do keep it up, and thanks for having me.
Thank you.